Hey guys, this is Trig day 14. So again, this is going to be kind of a combination day. So I'm using the same notes that I did on Trig day 12. So we're going to be taking the information that we found and we're going to be graphing it now. So the graphs are actually super simple to do because I only want you to draw one period of the function. So like I showed you on Trig day 11, how we first created sine and cosine, we're going to do it similar to that. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is, I know that this is sine, so it's starting at the midline. So I'm starting at 0. Okay, every single one of these functions, of these graphs, is going to have 5 important points that we need. So remember, sine curve looks kind of like this. It's going to go up and then back down again. It almost makes like an S curve, right? It's kind of a little backwards, but it looks similar to an S. So for this function, we start at 0. We know we're going to be going up 3 and down 3 because of our amplitude. So I need to label 1, 2, 3. It's going to be going all the way up there, and then -1, -2, -3. So first thing is figure out where your starting point is, and then figure out how high and how low do you need to go. Okay, so now we know that we're going to have to make one full curve. The last point should be at the period, right? Because that's when one of them finishes. So my last point here is going to be at pi. Okay, so I am splitting this into 4 equal pieces. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is you take your period, divide it by 2. So that's going to be our halfway point. So if I have pi and I divide it by 2, that's just pi over 2. I'm going to take that and I'm going to cut it in half again. So what's half of a half? That's a fourth. So it's going to be pi over 4. Now, this is going to be 3/4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply it by 3, or you can just count up. So this is pi over 4. This is 1/4. Then this would be 2/4. Then this would be 3/4. And then 4/4. We're just simplifying. So this is 1/4. So I can either multiply it by 3 or I can count up. So it's 3 pi over 4 here because I have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Or pi over 4, 1 pi over 4 times 3 would be 3 pi over 4. So now that I have all of my points here, I just have to follow the pattern. So for sine, I go like this, right? So first I go up. So at pi over 4, I'm up at 3 because that's my amplitude. Then I go back to the middle. Then I go down. And then I go back to the middle. So there is my function, and now I just need to connect them. And remember, this is a curve, so don't do like V's. It is curved, just kind of like when we do parabolas, it's just like that. And then if I wanted to, I could keep going. I would go, the next point would be up, and then I'd be in the middle, and then I would be down. So you just have to know what a sine curve looks like, and then you're just following that shape. So I go up, middle, down, middle. Okay. So again, first thing is find your midline, find where you're starting, label your axes. The period is the x-axis, then cut it in half, cut that in half again, and then count up. Okay. So we're going to go on to number 2. So for this one, my midline is at 0. I'm at cosine though, so I start up at the amplitude. I'm not starting at 0. So my amplitude is 3/4 here. So I'm just going to say that this is 3/4. I'm just going to label it that way. And then this is going to be -3/4. Okay. So I'm starting up for cosine. I'm starting up at the top. Okay. So I've got that first initial point. Now I need to take the period, which is 3 pi. So I've got 3 pi over here, and I need to divide that by 2. I divide it by 2, and I get 3 pi over 2. I need to divide that in half again. That's going to be 3 pi over 4. Now I'm counting up. So I said you can multiply by 3, or you can count up using this. So it'd be 3 pi over 4. Then I need to add that to itself again. So then it'd be 6 pi over 4, and then it'd be 9 pi over 4. And if you can simplify, obviously you have to simplify. But 9 pi over 4 does not simplify. Okay, so cut it in half again. Take this, multiply it by 3. Okay, so now for cosine, I start up, and then I kind of, it's almost like a C, right? I'm going like this. So I start up, then I go to the middle, then I go down, and I'm kind of getting over the top of my number here, but then I go down, and then I go to the middle, and then I go back up again. And again, make it a curve. Do not have sharp edges here. It is a curve. And there we go, there's our answer. Okay, so once you know the shape and you figure out your numbers, it's actually really easy. You just have to find where those next points go. Okay, so we're just taking that information that we already found on day 12 and we're just putting it onto a graph now. Okay, so this one is a little different because I'm shifted down 2. So first thing is find your midline. So here's -2, that's where the middle is gonna be. Okay, so that's almost like my x-axis up for examples 1 and 2. This is now the middle. Okay, so now I have an amplitude of 1, so I only have to go above it. So I'm gonna go from -1 to -3. Okay, so for this one, my last point is gonna be at pi over 2. Now I have to divide that in half, pi over 4. Divide that in half again, pi over 8. And then count up 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, or just multiply it by 3. So 3 pi over 8 would be this one. Okay, and now again, look at what you have. That's cosine. So I'm starting up at the top. Then I go to the middle, and mine are a little weirdly spaced out here, but I go to the middle, and then I go down, and then I go to the middle, and then I go up to the top again is where I end. Okay, and then just curve it through. And there we go. Okay, so same thing, find those numbers and then curve it through. So these numbers are super important though, because this tells you where the curve is, because for number 2 and 3, like these curves almost look exactly the same, except this one shifted down. But look where this is ending. This is ending at pi over 2, which is a lot shorter than it would be for 3 pi, right? That would be more stretched out. So that's why these numbers are important, because even though these curves kind of look similar, this one should be way, way tinier than this one would be if we graph them on the same set of axes, because this one's ending at pi over 2, and this one is ending at 3 pi. So this one will be way more stretched out than this one would be. Okay, and our last one here for question number 4. Okay, so here my new midline is shifted up at 1. There's 1, and I'm going to be going 3 is my amplitude. So I'm going 3 above it. So 2, 3, 4, and then 3 below. So 0, -1, -2. Okay, this one is sine. So I'm starting at the middle, at the midline there. Okay, and now I need to find my numbers. So I've got 2 pi at the end, cut it in half. Pi, cut that in half again, pi over 2. Count up, 3 pi over 2. Okay, so now start in the middle, and then I go up, then I go to the middle, then I go to the bottom, and then I end up back at the middle. And then we just curve it all the way through. And try to space yours out as evenly as you can. Mine got a little cramped over at the side, but space them out as evenly as you can. See how this is, these should be the same size, basically, this part and this part. Mine got a little cramped in here. So again, make sure, start at your midline, draw that in so you know that that's like your halfway point. Figure out your amplitude, go that many up and that many down, that's your y-axis. Then for your x-axis, you take the period and divide it into 4 equal pieces. So divide in half, divide that in half again, and then count up, or just take this, multiply it by 3. And then sine, up, middle, down, middle. Cosine, start at the top, go middle, down, middle, up. Okay, so go ahead, try your homework for Trig day 14, and then that is it for this week. So we don't have a day 15, there's only 4 days of homework for this week.